evolution and evolutionary process with a kind of a special case study having to do with humans. And because of the topic area, it has a tendency oftentimes to generate a bit of controversy. We haven't really had so much controversy, I think, thus far in the exhibit. And it's mostly because I think that we have a very particular kind of clientele who come into our museum. And so, of course, they're all expecting this kind of exhibit, and I think are very open to any kinds of things that we would discuss here, but know that it can be controversial. I do want to say at the onset that everything in the gallery is actually touchable, and a lot of people don't know that, because often when they walk into exhibit spaces, they think that you shouldn't be touching anything, even if it looks like it's open and you can touch it. But basically, in this particular exhibit, we put things out purposefully so you would be able to do this. We also hope that anybody can interact with the exhibit on any level they would like to do that. They can, of course, look at their arm and count the number of hair follicles on their arm if they so choose to do so. They can touch, the chimpanzee arm, put their own hand up against it, put their hands onto the gorilla hands, anything that really kind of works for them is really okay. The way the exhibit was actually designed is to really kind of make it relatively indestructible. And that means that we can even have kids hang on some of the exhibits. And each one of the casts, say for example, that's projecting out of the timeline back in the section a little bit further back, each one of those can hold about 100 pounds of somebody kind of grabbing on it and hanging underneath it, okay? If anything breaks, we also did the following thing, just so you all know, okay? It's all replaceable, okay? So all of the casts that you see in the exhibit are things that we made here. So we can make duplicate ones, so there's no reason to panic about a breakage. I mean, pretty much if something does break, it's always a good idea to let us all know that it's broken, but we can go about the process of getting it repaired or replaced, okay? We've already had a little bit of breakage, I guess as some of you know.
The canine tooth.
The canine tooth. Yeah, and interestingly with the canine tooth, you could see that there was a tool used to lever it off, okay? Because you really couldn't take it off just using your hands. You have to stick something underneath it. And part of the area on the panel right underneath it has a kind of a skid mark that came from something like a screwdriver or something like that, or maybe a pin knife. Okay? So yeah, if something breaks, just let us know, because that worked out great. We were able to replace it relatively quickly, and we'll probably have to continue on doing that. For those of you who've been in the museum a while, you know that we don't have a tendency to have interactive exhibits. So it's rare to have things that are touchable. And when you do that, you take on a certain kind of risk, but you also too become more interactive with the people who come into the gallery space and come several homes. The exhibit's actually divided into 6 sections, and that's how we laid it out initially. The gallery space itself is 4,100 square feet. And we thought at the time they were putting the designs together that we might be a little bit cramped. But actually, in fact, it seemingly has a decent kind of amount of space. It's also designed to store room for anybody who has any kind of physical, differently able to pattern movement if they're in a wheelchair with crutches or whatever. There's enough space in any area of the gallery that they're going to be able to manipulate through it relatively easily. So we don't have to be shy on any of those scores. And a person in that kind of situation should be able to see everything actually in the exhibit. That's why it's been designed at particular kinds of levels and heights to be able to have anyone be able to interact with anything that they would so choose to interact with. In terms of mechanics, probably the only thing that would happen in a person who was in a wheelchair, for example, is that in the one section at the beginning part of the exhibit where you see those chairs, it would be hard for a person to get off and sit in the chair. And then there's actually a docking space with a chair in there. So the person can go in to that area and press the buttons and actually have the same experience. We've also had a lot of sometimes I talk actually you all. So, what you're doing and what you're thinking is really keeping me. Working with you has been actually a total pleasure. I mean, I've had many opportunities where I've actually been writing with Brian and all other people within the museum saying really how great we've been. I mean, it's beyond what I would have ever expected. So,
We appreciate that, so thank you.
oh yeah, well, it's true, and I know that it's not easy to satisfy all the different kinds of things that happen in this building, and I know that some of us are a little bit crazy, including myself, okay?
Some.
And I have done some pretty wild things on occasion, and you've not even made me feel especially bad about that, so like I'm really pleased about it. But what I was going to say is, I mean, sort of going on with that, is my dad is blind. And so because he's blind, I have always this feeling about people really not being able to work into a gallery space and have a feeling about a gallery, because there are so few that really have different kinds of ways for people that are visually impaired to interact with anything. It's basically primarily visual. So we've had a couple of people come through that are visually impaired, going from really complete blindness to being just partially visually impaired. And they've had a nice experience because of the very touching elements, and then also too because of a lot of the audio elements. So although it may not be the same experience as another person would have, but really indeed everybody that comes to the gallery I think has a somewhat different experience. Okay, so there you go. I mean, as long as we can give something, to a whole range of people, then I'm a really happy gal. The exhibit is actually written on about a 12-year-old level. So if you actually kind of read the labels, they're pretty concise and very succinct. In terms of language, we didn't use a lot of jargon. Okay? And if we did use jargony kind of, evolution kinds of words, we always try to explain it somewhere in the space. So if someone's asking you a question and you're unsure of the word or whatever, it is usually explained somewhere within that section. So you should be able to kind of go over and point that out, or if you have an opportunity to go through yourself and know all the answers, better yet. But I know that that's sometimes really hard to do. The exhibit actually has 82 pages of text on the walls. Okay? So yeah, don't expect it's not a 20-minute kind of a gallery space. A lot of times you can move through, I'm sure you know, galleries, especially ones here that basically the labels will be, pot from China. You know what I mean? And then, it has the year that it was found or whatever, the year that it was, actually made. And you're not really reading that for content. Okay? This is actually telling a story. So all of the labels do have meaning. And so when we say that something's in 82 pages, it takes a while to read 82 pages. And all of the words actually do have meaning for us. I mean, they were actually chosen very carefully. Because I'm not a gallery exhibit writer, it's actually written by a professional writer. Okay? So I can't claim that I had anything to do with, I think, the really nice writing style in the exhibit, except in the sense that I said basically what I would like it to say, and then essentially I had a translator who then made it into English, okay? So it is written at about a 12-year-old level, which is the level of most newspapers in the United States. So just in case you are kind of curious about that, just know that's about where it is. We have had littler kids come into the gallery, and we're not so sure at the moment what kind of experience they have, okay? Eventually we're going to have this thing happen, and again, we're probably going to call upon you to do a lot of work on that occasion, where we have what's called it's called a summative evaluation, where a professional museum evaluator actually comes in with a group of people, and then at the end of their experience in the gallery, actually asks them a series of questions. Then she takes their answers, the questions and their answers, and writes us a report as to how effective a lot of this was. And of course, we will be with littler ones, we will be with high schoolers, and we will be with adults. So, we can kind of get a range of all of these people's experiences in the space. But at the moment, we were waiting really kind of for completion. I also always say the following thing, and this is Not meant as a joke, although some people think it's a joke, but here you go. We have to begin to think about, and I think that this is what would make life fun for all of us in the museum. I mean, these guys, working on so many levels, on the exhibit, not just physically what's in the space, but that an exhibit is an experience on a lot of different levels to a lot of different kinds of people. So they spend a lot of time putting together a really nice website that goes with the exhibits. You can always point visitors to that if they need more information. Point visitors to our education department because we actually have teacher guides and student guides. Okay? So in case somebody wants to bring a youngster in and is unsure how to kind of guide them in terms of the topic, they'll be able to do this with some of that material. And I think that's going to work really nicely for a lot of our visitors too. Okay? What else I wanted to say, probably not so much else, I guess, mechanically. But you get the idea that we really are trying to do a lot of different things. I know what other little parts I want to say. I also want to see the gallery, in a sense, on occasion actually change. Okay? The thing is, you think change, and that takes this huge input, and you're altering things or whatever. Well, your whole structure of your life is altered all of the time, and there's other things that may become very interesting issues that would be really nice for us to key into and to make accessible in the gallery space. And one of the things that I've come to realize is that talking to lots of different groups that have come through is that the little part of the exhibit that's on the evolution of the horse, it shows horse limbs going from these little four-toed early critters up to the big, huge, horses that we see today, the domesticated horses. That particular very small part of this exhibit is very interesting to lots of people. Okay? People who are veterinarians who talk about specializations in the feet of horses, and then all of those people out there that like looking at horse races, okay? And then all of those people out there that became very concerned over the issues with a lot of the race horses dying tragically associated with injuries to horse racing. So I keep saying what I want to do is work with people here at Penn and the New Bolton Center that have done a lot of really cool videos on this, and maybe just put up a little video display of what happened with Barbara and why it was a problem. I mean, so in other words, constantly just using the space, okay, as tie-in things for people.
She doesn't need Barbara.
She doesn't need nothing. We could try that. We could put down little bits, a little layout. They'll kill me if I mess up the carpet. But you get the idea that we can always be doing sort of fun things with people. Because when you really kind of know evolution and evolutionary process, it doesn't really stop, you know what I mean? Everything is kind of an example, and it can be a really interesting example. And anything that draws the public into the experience is going to be a really positive thing. So then I always say the other thing, if you're comfortable and you know something that's interesting, go for it, okay? Or if there's something that's interesting to you in the gallery space, okay, spend the time there looking at it or talking with people about it, because the thing is that your interest and excitement is what generates the interest and excitement in others, okay? And no, I mean, even with our group that's working with the docents, what we're finding is that, people are a little afraid of, knowing everything about the gallery system. Nobody ever listens to me, but when the people have to do with publicity, say something that it works, get a label that says Penn Museum on here, okay? Because the thing is, I see and I'm kind of an iconic image here in the gallery, and it's in the wrong place, and it's actually sending the wrong message. Marla, is she cleaning his ears? The exhibit's about humans, and when you walk in and see a chimp, it's a bit of a bad thing to do, okay? However, what we find is that the public can guide us in some of these kinds of things, and they like it here, and they like taking a picture here, so who am I to say where it should or should not be? Okay? This should actually be in the little video theater, which is in the back, okay? And we priced out to try to get a second copy of it, so it could be in the place where it's really supposed to be, okay? You're supposed to be sitting in the video theater beside the chimpanzee as you watch a video about the future of humans. have as our original home.
Oh, okay.
So it is in the wrong spot. It looks like somebody made a little messy on it.
Could be the chin.
Is it glue? No, it isn't. Ew! It's like chimpanzee wee-wee. Here is the introduction. And the introduction is actually very kind of nice looking visually. And it actually is just telling you about what a human is. I mean, that's its whole function. And it is, some of the stuff is kind of familiar and some of it isn't very familiar at all. I mean, communication, I think a lot of people know, would be one of the defining features of humans, okay? But I mean, dexterity is probably another one that people would consider as part of humanness. But a lot of people don't know, for example, that we have many kind of features that are associated with endurance, movement, with a lot of flexibility and balance and things of this nature. And that's also kind of an essential core of our humanness. I especially like the one on appetite because humans can eat virtually any kind of food. And a lot of people don't know that, but we are all omnivores. We're capable of pretty much using anything as a food source. And we do it to make a little bit of surprise. You know, we have actually one of the AV designers, Edna, was the only person that would eat a bug. So she actually, rather than having the actors and actresses, which are, you know, highlighted here, it actually is Edna that's going to eat the bug. Okay? Yeah, and look at the look on her face when she does this.
She's on a diet. She's on a diet.
Oh, she's on a diet now. She's a good sport, Edna is. Yeah.
All right.
And she did eat them.
Was it
And
dead?
by the way, yeah, it was dead. And all insects, by the way, do taste like chicken. And they say with a little bit of a lemony flavor to them. Okay, yeah. So it always tastes like lemon
It's a
chicken.
delicacy many places.
Yeah, in a lot of places.
But you know what, soon we might have to eat bugs.
Yeah. You should eat bugs. Good, they're good
High
sources of
protein.
protein and
Look, if the price of food keep on going up and gas, what you gonna do? See a bug in the house?
Oh, man.
I'm sorry, I'm not doing this. And the communication, all of the people, you see the signers and the writers, they're all writing segments about what evolution is. And the signer is actually signing Theodosius Dobzhansky, who's a very famous evolutionist who makes the statement that everything makes sense in light of evolution. And so there's just a lot of messages like that in the exhibit. We try to have a lot of kind of fun stuff like that out there too. And even the writing in Chinese, they're doing the same thing. So what's a human? And now we move through. So this we would say is area 1, and right behind it is area 2. And in area 2, we place ourselves in what we would call the natural world. So we're actually mammals, and we're actually primates. Because of our space constraints, we couldn't go way, way far back and talk about the fact that we're chordates and vertebrates and all these other kinds of things. So we started with mammals, and then we moved to primates. Okay? We also in every part of the exhibit, we tried to make sure that we did not send out signals that, you know, scientists are all white men, that, you know what I mean, we were always trying to diversify everybody in the exhibit and really do a cut of all different kinds of people and put them in lots of different kinds of positions, because there's a tendency for the public to think that scientists are very sort of, you know, cookie cutter mold people. You know, they always look like this and they're always educated in this way. But scientists are about as diverse of a group of people as anybody out there on the planet. So, and that's an important message, I think, for young people. Although we're not saying it on every occasion, just for them to see it the way it really is, we thought was a really important thing too. So anyway, 2 is why you're a mammal, why you're a primate. And then when you move from there, you start to enter into the real true experience of evolution. And the first thing that we do is have a section which is called Witnessing Evolution. And in Witnessing Evolution, we ask people to actually sit on the laps of famous scientists and find out what they did, okay, and why they did it, and why they are such important contributors to our understanding of knowledge of life on the planet Earth, okay? And the thing is that we also did it with little audio clips. And the reason why we did it with the little audio clips is because what we wanted people to experience is these people just had an idea. You know what I mean? It's like any old person, you know, you have this idea. They just went out there, happened to be a great idea, went out there, collected information, and came to particular conclusions, which really changed the state of knowledge on our planet. I mean, that's a remarkable thing. And what you'll see is they're primarily just regular old people, you know what I mean? That, you know, they probably themselves never considered themselves a great scientist. It's just that they are great scientists, and it gives you a sense that everybody has the seeds of that within them. It's just, you know, how they're going to go about pursuing that as they go through their life. And yes, we did try to take a slice of different kinds of people as we went through that section. And I will tell you, it was really hard for us to find anybody that wasn't a white man. I'm telling you, it was really tough. Especially when we went back in history. Because they were white men. What are we going to do? The two at the end are women. Thank God. It was hard for us to find them. And I'm going to just tell you a little bit about some of them, just so you know why we would put them in there. And maybe why people, they might not be familiar to everybody. We tried to highlight Philadelphia and Penn on all possible occasions. Okay? Joseph Leidy, okay, is a very famous Philadelphia scientist. Okay? He was a professor of biology here at Penn. He was the president of the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia, and he correctly identified the first dinosaur from North America, okay, which is what is in the bell jar in front of him. A very important guy, found, by the way, in New Jersey. So a lot of people don't think of New Jersey as being a dinosaur heaven, but actually, in fact, there's some interesting things that have been found in New Jersey.
What was that in New Jersey that they...
Haddonfield. Yeah.
That's what it goes.
And the interesting thing about it is most people think the only thing you find in the ground in New Jersey are dead mafia people. Obviously, do every once in a while get something in. Anyway, that's Leidy. That's how we put him in there. We also put in Teilhard de Chardin, who was a priest, actually a monk, a Catholic monk. And a lot of people don't really realize it, but many religious people are avid evolutionists. And a lot of people today think that evolution, and especially Christian versions of God, are very much at odds with each other, but that's actually not really the case. And I have one person who came to the exhibit who saw the quote that says Christ is realized in evolution. And the person obviously was somewhat uncomfortable with being in the exhibit, and actually told me that after sitting in that chair and reading the quote, felt that they could at least think about what was in the exhibit, which is kind of a really interesting thing. Not that it necessarily convinced them or whatever, but just to realize that very prominent religious people and have worked, not only accepted evolution, but have actually contributed to our understanding of evolutionary process. To them was a real eye-opener. Okay? We also put in Rosalind Franklin. You can see based on her dates at the top, died at 38 years old. Okay? And she died, by the way, of ovarian cancer. Okay? A very interesting woman who is cast very badly in history, but probably is the person who really was the first one to understand the structure of DNA. It seems clear that her work was not only taken by the people that we come to associate with DNA, Watson and Crick, but it actually was probably stolen from her. Okay? They wrote many disparaging things about her, and her major biography is called The Dark Lady of DNA, okay? Because she, of course, was doing some amazing stuff at a time when there was a lot of competition over the structure of DNA. And then Mary Leakey, who, by the way, in this photograph that we actually got from the Leakey Foundation, when we first sent it on to our designers, Mary Leakey, when they're looking at the photograph, of course, on the computer screen, they say, well, Mary Leakey looks like she's got like some great big huge cold sore or something like that going on in her mouth. Here she was a big cigar smoker. She had a big old stogie in her mouth. Okay, we had to airbrush it out. I didn't mind the stogie, but they were saying, oh, it's going to look really bad if we have somebody smoking in the exhibit. Anyway, that's what she did. I mean, what can you say? I mean, Linnaeus has a bunch of fluffy curls. I mean, like, that looks pretty weird. I mean, if you look at it, we didn't want to airbrush his curls out, but we did airbrush her cigar out. And just so you know, when you press the 3 buttons here, when you're in the segment where they talk about, and the bell jar is matched to something they studied, when they talk about the thing that they're studying, the light goes on in the bell jar on the bottom, okay? So, in the Darwin chair where Marla just sat, for example, when the audio portion talks about Darwin's finches, which he correctly identified in the Galapagos Islands, a light comes on underneath the finches, and see how, I pressed that when I walked over.
There it is.
Pretty cool, huh?
It is cool, absolutely.
Can I tell you my favorite story in the exhibit space so far? One day I came in and there was somebody sitting in all of the chairs, right? And an older couple was coming into the section, and the man sat in Linnaeus, and his partner wife, obviously, known to each other very well, is standing there for a little bit of time, and then and it was a little bit of a surprise because, I mean, she was maybe 80 years old or something like this. The next thing I know, she sits on his lap in the chair, okay? And the next thing I look over and they're like hugging and smooching on the chair. I was kind of like, wow, who would have ever thought that about Linnaeus? Like, I'm so excited and sitting in the chair. So we had a really good time with that. It was really nice. I'm sorry, Richard, do you have to do a tour through with apologies? This is crazy. Brian asked if we could bring the security group through so they could see what was going on in the exhibit space. And then this is what's called witnessing evolution, and because we just wanted to have people have the experience of what it's like to be a scientist. So we wrote these little 45-second passages for them in 3 segments, so they could sit on all of them, or they could just do 1 or 2 or whatever it happened to be. And in the bell jar, yes, it is something that they studied. Behind you is actually we were told by people who do evaluations of exhibits that you always have to have a timeline in any exhibit about evolution. So we decided we didn't want to go for the old tried and true version of the timeline where you have this related to this, related to that. Because, basically you see these in all museums, they keep changing, you wind up being embarrassed by your timeline when they find new fossils and all these kinds of things. So we took a little bit of a different tactic, and the designers did a really nice idea. Remember that the exhibit is about the person who's in the exhibit. It's not literally about the objects, okay? So you start out, and basically the acrylic glass fragments, okay, are very small in terms of size. So when you look at your body reflected, it's all broken up. And then as you move through what we call the grades of evolution, that's a normal phrase that we do in evolutionary theory. We talk about grades. They become less broken up, and then eventually at the very end you just look at yourself, okay? It's in a flat glass panel, okay? So it's like a partial kind of a tunnel, okay? Starting very remote with the earliest grades and the origins of bipedalism, and then you move into what we do know about evolution, and that is we start in Africa, earliest grades, we begin to see things like increases in body size, brain size, this kind of stuff. Then we move into things that are more modern. We have movements out of Africa, and eventually we have the appearance of modern humans. Because everybody has to place us in some kind of time sequence. It's just a necessary thing that comes with any kind of an exhibit on evolution. So this is just the beginning part, essentially of our little projection, okay, through evolutionary time. The real centerpiece of the exhibit is actually the back room. And that whole thing, basically, is trying to give you a sense or an understanding that evolution and evolutionary process has a profound impact on every part of your biology. That's all it's really trying to do. It's doing it with a series, essentially, of interactives. Touchscreen, video, okay, and then a robotic arm to give you a sense of the kind of motion and things that the human body is capable of, okay. I've seen people stand at one video display. I've seen people just pass over them really quickly. Depends on what you want to take away. In each one of those video elements, they're matched to the portion of the body that they're sitting beside. So you can go to an ankle joint, a knee joint, a hip joint, basically a shoulder joint and a wrist joint. We just did 5 joints in the end. And the thing is that in each one of those places, we highlight something that's probably very familiar to the human that's looking at it, okay? Let's say you're a person that is a middle-aged person. No, let's say a young person, because we try to hit kids, we try to hit medium-aged people, middle-aged people, medium-aged people.
Either way.
What's a medium-aged person? I have no idea. A medium-aged person and then an adult, and then basically, and then an old person also too. But let's go for a youngster. All the knee problems, okay? You want to know what your cruciate ligaments are like. You want to know what your menisci are like. You want to know what a bursa is like. They're telling you you've got inflamed bursa. What the hell does that mean? We can go over there and look at what your bursa do, okay? Why they get inflamed, all of that kind of stuff. The videos, I think I've unfortunately talked poor Richard right out of the exhibit. Did he walk out of the exhibit? I'm so sorry, I was talking
they
too
were
much.
on a time
tour?
constraint.
Oh, okay.
I think he just wanted to see you.
Oh, to say something to them, or?
Look at
It's a
you.
good thing. One to look at.
To see what you look
For
like.
the shock value. And then the videos on the corners, were they important people? Because I didn't say anything to them. Was that bad? Did they just
I don't think so.
Because sometimes they do really bad stuff.
They just wanted to come in to
Okay.
Surviving.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
show what it was
Yeah.
like.
Can I ask you a question?
Corner is on osteoporosis, okay, so it's an older woman. Okay, and basically what it's telling you is that we have these commonalities of experience because of our evolutionary history, okay? Humans have a really difficult, actually tragic birth process. In most of the world, even today, about 20% of young women die in childbirth today, okay? We have access to biomedicine and cesarean sections in hospitals and all that kind of stuff, okay? But the majority of women, okay, suffer very strong consequences just of the normal act of reproduction. And a lot of people miss that point, okay? Now you want to ask yourself the question, why do we have a species where we can't even give birth to our own children, okay? Now the thing is, if you lose babies, okay, that's not a big deal, okay? Losing babies isn't a big deal, okay? I know that sounds harsh, and I'm not saying an individual baby, okay?
Don't lose the mother.
But yeah, losing the mother is a really big deal, okay? Because losing the mother, you're looking at the loss of 25 years or maybe more of energy of that society going into getting that woman to that age so she is a reproductive age person. You see what I mean? Okay? So the thing is that losing all of those women in every generation has a huge consequence on human history forever, okay? Forever, and probably into the future too, okay? So that's what this kind of experience is here. I know you have a little bit of a shocked look on your face when I said that babies don't mean that much. From an evolutionary perspective, okay, we have to reproduce, okay? But in terms of like the amount of energy that's expended into that individual, it's a minimal amount in comparison to the amount of energy that went into you 3 women, for example, to get you to your age so that you are able to not just reproduce one offspring, but to, you know, reproduce multiple offspring. Because you can have a second baby, you see? That's why I say, that when we talk about evolution, we're not talking about the individual experience of life or death. We're looking at it across all humans and across all time frames, and that's a very different kind of an experience, okay? And that's not taking away from the individual human who suffers a tragedy, which they certainly do if they lose a child. Feel your body. We have plenty of sections in there, like one of the things says, hold on to the, was supposed to be originally ramp, hold on to the ramp, okay, and squeeze your butt. You know what I mean? Well, stand there, stand totally straight, squeeze your butt. Tell me what happens to your knee. It tightens. It actually locks. Okay? Yeah. So you're thinking, how do you squeeze your butt and your knee tightens? Okay? Yeah. Okay? Find out why. You see, it's that kind of stuff. Okay? That actually, in fact, okay, a lot of the effort in your lower limb associated with balance and what allows you to walk, but also ultimately what causes a lot of damage in your body is essentially associated with the complex relationship of all of the bones and the musculature to each other, and it allows you to figure out what all of that is. If you ever wonder why it's always a bad idea to hit another athlete behind the knee if they're just standing there, it's because if they don't relax that squeezing kind of action at their knee and that rotation at their knee, that's when they're going to tear those ligaments or damage the cartilage in the knee. That's why a football hit on the back of the leg is a really bad idea. It's actually an evolutionary experience, okay? It's not just a knee experience, it's not just something that happens in football. You're actually witnessing evolution. And they even make penalties in football about it, and they don't even know that that's what they're talking about. It's all about evolution, okay? So that's where it comes from. Anyway, and then after you experience this one, I mean, I think that I've seen, I mean, basically you guys have it all down pat now and turning everything on and making sure it's all operational. So I'm not even going to talk about that because it seems like you know 10 times more than I know. But basically, I mean, I've been in the room recently, and it always seems to be high function. Anything about that at all? Okay, just because it's you know what you're up to. Yes, and apparently kids can punch it. I mean, it's not a great idea, but nevertheless, when punch it, it should be actually relatively okay. I've seen them really punch the button. The last two rooms are is evolution working on humans today? Okay. And we actually don't know because evolutionary processes are over a very long term. Our assumption is that if evolution is something which is working on all kinds of forms of life on the planet in the past, it's working today, okay? But because evolutionary change takes generations to eons, it's hard to know, okay? And what we can sometimes see is what looks like evolutionary changes or patterns, okay? It's another thing to know whether or not they're sustainable over a longer term. You see what I mean? They might be little teeny blips in there that have no importance, okay? I always give the example, bubonic plague killed 2/3 of the inhabitants of Europe.